Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tommy Soares. I'm the Assistant Director of the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. And today it is my pleasure of welcoming Dr. Daniel Sheik, who is the Director of Research and Technology at Amplified Sciences right here in West Lafayette, Indiana. Welcome to the program, Dan, and thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Well, it's more exciting for us because we get to really hear a little bit about what you're doing, what brought you here, what are some of the elements of your success in your career so far. And man, I really want to get deep and explore because you, from what I see, you have quite a nice history and a great path. And we would love to hear a little bit about that journey. So why don't we start with your background? Tell us a little bit about, your education and so on and so forth.
Sure. So I grew up in Rockford, Illinois. If you don't know, is basically like an hour and a half, 2 hours straight west from Chicago, right along the Illinois-Wisconsin border. And I ended up coming here as an undergrad back in 2004 to study biochemistry. I had the opportunity while I was here to work with Mark Lipton doing organic synthesis. That was really my first attempt, I would say, at doing lab work in a research environment. And then my senior year, I actually was introduced to and started working for Phil Lau. So doing some, targeted drug delivery, stuff like that is incredibly fascinating to me. And in my senior year, I actually put off all of my PChem credits until senior year. And then I realized that the chemistry GRE is like 40% PChem. So I put that off for a minute and applied for a job up in Madison as an associate scientist at a startup called Mirus Bio. So they were basically developing transfection reagents and functionalized polymers. I was able to get the position, and about 3 months later, they sold the research development arm to Roche. So within 3 months, I was working for Roche, which is a pretty nice thing to have on your resume. And we were cruising for a couple of years, building polymers, new scaffolds, new monomeric structures, all kinds of cool things to do targeted RNA therapeutic delivery. I think since I left, they've spun that off and it's now Arrowhead Madison, last I heard. But I maintained in that time a desire to go to graduate school. So for the next 3 years, I had taken the GREs, I had applied to grad school, I shot the moon. I was like, man, I'm going to Caltech, I'm gonna go Berkeley. They had different opinions about where I was going to go. So I just had to keep at it. And Dr. Lau actually told me about UC San Diego. I found a couple professors there that I really liked. I ended up applying and got in and worked with Jerry Yang, trying to develop polymeric materials that could interfere with amyloids. So, the big one is Alzheimer's. We were focused on HIV transmission through a seminal amyloid. So we developed some nanoparticles to target them. We developed a couple that could unravel these amyloid structures. And we did a little bit of small molecule synthesis for the brain. And after grad school, I was kind of, dead set on like, I'm going to go back to industry. Academia seems like there's a lot of papers to write, a lot of grants to write. I think I'd rather just, go back to industry. And I was pretty stubborn about, I want to be a senior scientist. I already have, experience. I'm good. And again, it didn't quite work out the way I'd drawn it up. And I remember I was emailing Dr. Lau, like, do you know anybody who's looking for a postdoc? I kind of want a new environment. And he's like, well, why don't you just come to my lab? So I came back to Purdue because, the basketball team's doing well, football's on the uptick. Why not, And sure. Kicked it for a couple of years there. We set up and started a lot of really good projects. We developed kinase inhibitors. We were developing, obviously, targeted therapeutics. It was my first experience really managing lab equipment, which is really fun. He's got a very big lab and everybody's using all the equipment. So being the guy that's like, oh, this is broken, can you fix it? Was an interesting twist. But it was definitely a great experience coming back here and getting to learn more. And I took that experience to Maryland because I wanted to go coast to coast, obviously, and worked at a company called Cellfire. Their main target is freeze-dried platelets that they can use for bleeding indications. So one thing about platelets that most people don't understand is that they're only good for about a week before they have to throw them away. So through their formulation, they're actually able to freeze dry them, store them for several years, and then rehydrate them and use them. My goal was to actually load these up with drugs. So think like doxorubicin and other things, because platelets naturally target sites of injury, whether it's cancer, whether it's an internal bleed, whatever the case may be, they will naturally go there. So spent a couple of years there, and obviously COVID hit and changed everybody's perception about where you want to work and how you want to work. And, the research landscape changed as well. We were working with actual human platelets, and the supply chain kind of died because they weren't sure what they were going to need for therapeutic purposes or otherwise. In that time, I started to reflect. My wife was still here working on her PharmD, PhD. My parents are still back in Illinois. I still have family around. So I actually decided to leave that job and reached out to a few people I knew here. And the guys at Novastio, which is now Quince Therapeutics, in the same building that I work in now, put me in contact with Diana at Amplified, and we've been building diagnostics ever since, trying to improve stratification for clinicians as far as risk is concerned for patients with pancreatic cancer.
Wow. I have to say first, how wonderful, how lucky we are that you came back and that you are here and you are working with us. This is great. It's almost like you try to go get away and then you came back. And it's, what's incredible about your story is also that you had a few of these moments where you realized that you were wrong, that you thought that you had certain expectations maybe, and that you were wrong, or that maybe, you needed to double check what was available or what was an opportunity that you could go after. Tell us a little bit about that, because some of those moments they're shocking to the body, but they really make us learn something about ourselves, and they really make us move in a certain direction, decide certain things. And I'd like you to reflect a little bit on those times if you can.
Sure. I mean, applying to grad school and getting, ultimately rejected, it does not feel good. I can say that right off the bat, but it does give you that opportunity to kind of reset and reestablish, why am I doing this? What am I really trying to accomplish? And where do I really want to do it? Again, I talked to Lau and he introduced me to UCSD, and that worked out for the best. But I mean, it's really taking stock of where you want your career to go. And, my father really tried to instill in us the idea that like these barriers aren't there to keep you out, right? They're there to see how much you actually want something. So, getting knocked down and, getting rejection after rejection letter is not a pleasant experience, but it absolutely, you're right. It does teach you kind of who you are and what you want to do. And, there's always plenty of opportunities. Just because you didn't get that job or you didn't go into that grad school or whatever, doesn't mean that something else, something better, something you might enjoy more might come along, and I've been lucky enough that, during my undergrad, I established a lot of friendships, met a lot of different academics around here. So, when it came time to come back, I had people to reach out to, and, I really like it here. It's a nice college town, good sports programs. It's hard to complain about too much.
Sure. And I think it's important to also show to the people that are watching this interview that really there was no failure. Like, okay, you get a rejection letter. They don't know what they're missing with you, right? And so that's also a perspective that we should be taking, especially, you're learning more and more from each rejection letter, maybe how to thicken your skin or how to write those letters or applications better, improve your CV or whatever it might be. But, coming back to the Phil Lau lab, what probably didn't seem like so bad. It doesn't seem like so bad to me. And then getting this position at Amplified Sciences and bringing you back here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I always tell people when they're interviewing for jobs in particular, it's not as easy to do when you get rejected from grad school. But, if they come back and they're like, we went in a different direction, it is always fair to ask them, what can I improve upon? Or what was it that you saw that really prevented you from wanting to hire me? Like, what was holding me back that I can work on in the future? And, you know, more often than not, they're going to come back and be like, wow, that's a great question. Here's a few things. Sometimes it's purely technical. I've been rejected from jobs because somebody had more mass spec experience than me, or, somebody was just a better fit. And that happens. You have to accept it. And then you got to keep going. It can't just be, oh, I got rejected, I guess it's a new career for me. I mean,
Yeah.
that can't be the mentality.
Totally, totally. And what I appreciate also from what you're saying is this, you got to have that energizer, bunny going. You got to keep it up, and you got to have that faith on yourself, which is what I think I'm seeing from you, that, you have a certain confidence that, yeah, I've been through the paces, and now I know what I can and can't do, what I want, what I don't want, which is great to see that in a sense. What do you think got you that job at Amplified Sciences? What were some of the elements of that success?
To be honest, when I speak to Diana about it now, she was like, we weren't very sure that you had enough experience. And I mean, like it or not, your credentials are going to be kind of a foundation for how they see you. What you put in your CV and your resume, and where you graduated and how long it's been and all that really plays into it. But also your ability to communicate is incredibly important. So one thing that I've tried to, I wouldn't say master, but do better at, is to break down a lot of these complicated scientific things into, palatable material that people can understand. And it doesn't matter if you're talking to the CEO or a business person or your parents or, other colleagues, being able to really establish the problem, break it down into its components, and, provide some measure of solution for each of them, I think is really what's put me over the top for this position. They were ready to go. I had, assay experience, I had management, I had some of this development work that they wanted. And, we kind of got going and started figuring it out from there.
That's awesome. And so this part of communication and breaking down complex concepts into pieces or working parts, is this something that just comes natural to you, or have you taken some courses? Have you practiced this? How are you coming about this knowledge or this type of quality?
It's practice. You have enough experience. I've had the luxury throughout my career of doing, chemistry and biology and biochemistry. So, trying to break down an assay to a synthetic chemist, or trying to explain the chemistry and pH behind what's going on to a biologist, you have to, try to reach out to, varied sources, like, oh, this is just kind of like this experience that I know you've had. So like, let's just start from a common ground and we can build upon that. I think it's important to be able to communicate to anybody, and be personable, and try not to get frustrated if people don't understand things, right? Like, I think that's one thing as scientists, oftentimes, you're explaining, your synthesis or your assay, and people are like, well, that doesn't really make sense. And you keep trying and you keep trying, and it just doesn't work. And getting frustrated about it isn't ever going to help. So you got to just try a different tact.
It sounds like you're a wonderful teacher, uh, and it sounds like you're a great trainer too, and a good mentor. Have you had good mentors in your career?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, aside from Lipton and Lau, I mean, I think they're both pretty good mentors. They're very smart guys. They may, any academic will get down on you a little bit, but it's really just to help you, right? Like, you don't understand this, you need to do better. But I've also had, Sean Monahan was my first boss when I started working up in Madison, and he always instilled in us, don't put off until tomorrow something that you can spend an extra hour today doing, because then you're a day behind. And every week you do that is another day. And by the end, you're months behind where you could be. And I'm really glad I had that experience going into grad school, because everybody's trying to get out as quick as possible. And sometimes that extra hour or two on the weekends or something like that is hugely beneficial.
I agree. I agree. And it's, you can use that time to watch another episode of your favorite show. And that's what happens.
Yeah,
And, you stay up until God knows what time at night. And then
exactly.
you wish you would have spent that hour doing what you were supposed to be doing. That's really great. Great guidance there. Um, Dan, I want to ask you though,
Yeah.
uh, San Diego, Madison, Maryland, West Lafayette. Uh, I would think there would have been different cultures that you're experiencing in all these different pockets of the country. But are there different cultures scientifically? Would you say things happen differently in these different labs, these experiences? And maybe not so much the culture of the city itself, but scientifically, let's put it this way: you've learned how to cook from many different chefs, and so can you speak a little bit about what it was like to experience these different environments?
Yeah, I mean, I would say West Lafayette and Madison are pretty similar. They're both college towns. Madison definitely gets a nod, with the state capital. There's a lot more going on in that city than there's around here. And that can be a little distracting, but the winter is it's rough. It's rough up there, Don't let them undersell you. It gets frigid and just 18 inches of snow all the time. So you don't really have anything else to do except be inside. So you might as well keep working in the lab, right? And San Diego is the exact opposite, right? It's always nice. So you can be sitting in lab, everything fails, you can just go outside, go for a walk down by the beach, go for a hike, come back in an hour or so, you'll feel right as rain. So I mean, there's definitely differences in the culture. I would say in terms of the quality of scientists, I mean, everywhere there's great people, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't get away from it. It's all over. So it's really up to you, what kind of area you're looking for,
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess also maybe the culture of competition. Let's say, have you felt more competition? Well, obviously, there's a difference between academia and industry in
Mhm.
terms of competitiveness through the roles that you play and the positions that you've had. But is there a different atmosphere for competitiveness in San Diego just because there's more concentration versus here you feel more like, hey, I'm more the chief engineer here, the chief technologist.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities in San Diego, but it is also, a vacation destination that everybody wants to go to. So, you're not competing just with people from Southern California. You're competing with, everybody nationwide who wants to go to a warm climate and stop shoveling snow. So
Sure.
there's definitely, in terms of getting into industry, a lot of competition out there. And there's a lot of great schools in California, Scripps, Berkeley, UCSD, all these places. So I think it's a healthy amount of competition, but I think a lot of these companies in the Midwest and some places maybe where you weren't expecting, like Salt Lake City and St. Louis, are really able to make headway because they can provide a lower cost of living, or they can provide a more free atmosphere with better funding. There are there are different challenges everywhere you go in terms of competition, but no matter what, I mean, academia and industry are always going to be linked, right? They're always going to look at what you did in grad school, how many papers you published, where was it, who were you working with, before they even make their preliminary decision about, whether or not they want to bring you in for interviews. So there's competition the whole time.
Well, and I guess that's a good thing
Yeah.
in a way because it keeps us sharp, right? It keeps us thinking and helping us improve. I tend to think of it as good competition. It's always healthy competition in the, at least in the academic circles. Sure, it can be cutthroat, but there is a good push to make it better and to make the science better and to find the truth, always to find the truth.
Right.
And so I like that we're competitive about that, that we're not satisfied with just any answer. We got to get to the bottom line of things.
Right. I
Uh,
mean, the competition is absolutely healthy, and you're right. There's the common ground of, we need to find the answer, whether it's find this drug, find this assay, find this material, whatever it is. I mean, everybody's got that common goal to try to find this answer. And yeah, I mean, some people take it a little far and get a little more cutthroat than others, but that happens everywhere in anything you do. So
yeah.
again, yeah, it is healthy, and it's definitely good.
And so one thing that I wanted to ask you is, when you transitioned from these different labs, they were academic labs and some of them were company labs. You went through this transition to Roche. I want to ask you about that, but tell us a little bit about the difference between the labs in academia and industry that you've observed that has been mainly, that made an impact on you. And maybe if there are similarities, we would be interested in hearing some of those too.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the transition from Mirrors to Roche, that was a pretty awesome experience to have early in my career. Because, starting off in a, smaller biotech of about 50 people, everybody's budgeting and funding. And then Roche comes in and they're like, "Hey, you guys can have a dartboard and a basketball hoop. That's nothing to us." So, I mean, that worked out really well. It's a great transition. But in terms of industry and academia, all of the academic labs I've been in between here and UCSD, a little bit of what I experienced in Madison, these universities are well funded. They're huge campuses. The equipment, the facilities are typically unrivaled, right? If you need to take an NMR or whatever spectra, you have access to it. If you want to build 3D models, somebody knows how to do that. You may not get that luxury at a company until it's the size of Roche or Pfizer or one of these giants, right? So there's definitely a trade-off there. And also, academics, you find that new shiny thing and you just follow it. You'll find a way to get funding for it, but you just want to know that answer. And in industry, more often than not, you're working towards this market, you got to develop this product, and you find a little tangent that you're very interested in that could be something very unique and cool, but it's not quite on the radar yet. So you either have to try to promote it to get it out there so that you can work on it, or, you kind of have to leave it all together. So there's a little difference between them, but I mean, they each have their benefits, I would say.
And I think I read in one of your, and congratulations, by the way, on being the 23 pair winner for BioCrossroads. I
Yeah.
should have mentioned that at the beginning. What a great honor and accolade.
Yeah, then I had the
So
inaugural year.
absolutely wonderful, and congrats.
Thank you.
I think I read in one of those paragraphs that you're really moved about creating products that are touching people's lives. And, can you tell us a little bit about that excitement? Because, in academia, you do things and okay, you publish a paper, you write the thesis and so on, but it's very seldom that you get your work to have a direct impact in people's lives. And it seems that in industry, you're much closer to that. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, Purdue University in and of itself is actually really good about trying to get, industry partnerships or trying to spin out companies and put things on the market. So I think it was an interesting place to kind of, grow and learn throughout my career, how you kind of take these things out of an academic lab where, oh, we developed this drug that did this, or, oh, this marker is going to do all these things, and really try to focus it to a point where you can commercialize it, right? It's not enough to just have the answer. You have to make it in a way that is marketable and, usable. So a lot of times, especially in like drug development, oh, I found the cure for cancer right here. It works in this cells, it works in this mouse. And a lot of labs are overlooking, they're doing better now, but they overlook some of the PK/PD studies that they need to do. And, that stuff's not super sexy. It's not going to get into Nature necessarily unless you're doing a whole screening of like 1,000 drugs, right? So, they shoot for the larger impact publications. And then in order to take it from an idea like that, or a proven drug like that to the market, or an assay to the market, is a lot of, I would say, marginal improvements over time, right? So one of the things Joe always mentions is, going from 0 to 90% is a really steep curve, but getting to that 100%, it levels off, and it takes a lot more effort to get there. And I think that is where industry is well suited. We focus on what's marketable, what needs to go to the market. I'm talking to clinicians fairly regularly about, what do you guys need? How do you want us to improve it? What is it what characteristics are you looking for? So that we can really define a product and make that our goal, as opposed to, a more open-ended academic pursuit of like, I want to treat this disease, or I want to build this scaffold, things like that. But they are, again, intertwined, right? When I'm stuck on something, I'm going to the literature where the academics are publishing to see what they've done, see how we're going to get around this.
And so the focus right now for you is pancreatic cancer. Is that correct? That remains the primary focus of the company, to create diagnostic tools for pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, so I can give you the spiel here. The problem with pancreatic cancer is a lot of older people, above 50 or 60. If you go into the doctor and they want to do a scan of your torso, there's about a 50% chance that they're going to find a growth on your pancreas. And they don't know offhand what that actually is. Is it cancerous? Is it benign? What are we going to do about this? And because pancreatic cancer can come in rapidly and lethally, they either have to surgically remove it, and that puts a lot of burden on the patient, or try to wait and see and risk that it does develop into cancer. So what we want to do, and what our conversations with clinicians have really highlighted, is that we need to provide some resolution. So we're trying to develop a panel of assays right now for pancreatic cancer, where first off, we can tell them, your patient can go home, or your patient needs more study. And if your patient needs more study, we have a follow-up panel where we can tell you just how concerned they should be. Do you need to do surgery right now? Is there a chance for other treatment options? And really provide that resolution that they want, so that they can stop subjecting, the older population to these surgical procedures where they may die, or they can't afford it, or they have other complications. But it is the main focus, and we are branching out. We do have projects in like thyroid cancer. We're always looking for new indications where we can make an impact. The base of our platform is surface enhanced Raman, so it's incredibly sensitive. So we went with pancreatic cyst because the diagnostic fluid that we get is very limited. So we can make an improvement on the assays themselves. We can really stack up these markers for clinicians to be able to better make diagnostics and really help a lot of people.
That's awesome. Must be a great feeling to know that, and to be able to make those products. Are you guys make the product, develop the products, and then you have manufacturers and distributors that then take it, or is that all starting up now, and you're starting to get on that ramp, if you want?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, we have partners, over in Boston, over in San Francisco. We're discovering new markers all the time through our discussions with clinicians. But what we're doing is really building assays, and we're gearing up to open up a clinical lab so that we can start putting these assays out there for clinicians to order. And then once we have that lab open, as we make more assays and bring more people along, we'll be able to make this thing grow a little bit more. But right now, I mean, it's only a handful of us just cranking it out as best we can,
So I have to ask you about that, because it is a startup company, right? And it is a small company. There must be a lot of pressure. There must be a lot of responsibility and honor that you carry with that responsibility. But it also must be very different from other experiences that you've had at other companies, where it might have been a little bit larger or more mature, right?
Yeah, I mean, no matter where I've been, there's always an air of like everybody needs to, chip in multiple different things. Here, I mean, it's literally we all, have to be able to do everything.
Yeah.
I can wake up one day and be writing grants, the next day be in the lab, the third day be, talking to a bunch of people. It goes all over the place. And I think that's, we've really built a team that can handle it. We have two senior scientists. One, is crushing it in chemistry and helping us really develop some of the PChem that we need. The other one is an engineer who has been doing assay development for their entire career. So, between the three of us in the lab, we're putting our heads together and making it happen as best we can. And of course, it all comes down to funding and raising money and making milestones so that you can be valuable, and then we'll start to expand and grow this operation as best we can.
That's awesome. I think there is a lot to unpack in what you just said, because I don't think people realize, number one, that you have to kind of jump at doing all of these different tasks, because if you don't, it's just not going to get done. um,
Sometimes if you want it done, you got to do it yourself, and sometimes there's nobody else around to do it. So
that's
I
right.
mean, it's important, to have that kind of well-rounded, I'm just going to do whatever it takes attitude, especially in a smaller startup, for sure.
So what does it take to get that perspective? What do you do to help you when you're like, oh, now I have to do this, or now I have to learn about that, or now I have to pick up this skill or that skill? How do you break through and keep on going? Because you seem to be, again, like this Energizer bunny that is just going and going and going.
I mean, that first action is correct. Usually it's like, oh, it's just it's more stuff, but I mean, it's always been exciting to learn new techniques, to learn about new assays, new indications. I mean, there's so much science out there for you to learn about and do and apply your own personal experiences to, that it's hard not to get a little bit excited when all these things happen. I admit, I would say my least favorite part is technical writing and grant proposals and things. But even then, I mean, learning how to present the story in a clear, coherent manner that is really, concise it is a skill set, like not just explaining it with words, but literally, containing it to 1 page or 3 pages or whatever you're left with. I think there's plenty of things that you can learn and do, and there's plenty of excitement to be had no matter what. I mean, sometimes it's mundane, like I'm going to get trained on this instrument. Sometimes it's really exciting, I'm going to do this animal study, or I'm going to test these clinical samples. You want to have that mentality moving forward, I think.
And I wanna understand, because the way that you're painting it is, you're talking about excitement. You're talking about, hey, you got to get excited about these new things, these new concepts, maybe even get excited about the new qualities or the new things that you're learning, the new techniques or whatever it might be, right? And it seems to me that that's your approach. Is you think about it, you're like, okay, I'm gonna get excited about this because it is new. It's something that will help me grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's not always the most exciting thing. Sometimes you have to pump yourself up, but really, your goals in industry should just to be better today than you were yesterday, right? To make some marginal improvement. Sometimes it's hitting it out of the park. You got this publication done, you solved whatever riddle. Sometimes it's just, I don't know why this pipette doesn't work, and figuring that out. But I mean, as scientists, we deal with failure all the time. It is ingrained in you throughout grad school that you're just going to constantly not do well. And you need to find something, even if it's something small, to really bolster your spirits if you really want to get through and have success in the career.
And so you think that you learned some of that in grad school by failing in your experiments all the time?
I think I learned some of that even when I was at Roche, going back to Sean Monahan. He was, a reaction would fail and I would just go, it didn't work. And he's like, well, why not? What are we going to do next time? How do we learn from things that don't work? If they're wherever a journal of failed experiments, I would be a main contributor. And I think it would be incredibly beneficial to everybody to know how things don't work so that they don't travel down that same path, right?
Yeah, that's very important. No, I think, great words again of wisdom to realize what you did wrong so that you can correct that on the next one. But it's all about realizing or at least documenting it in a proper way so that you can go back. And I mean, that's why they make us do the lab books and
Yeah,
so on and so forth, right? So that we
absolutely.
can go back and say, what did I do? How many microliters was I?
Yeah. A year later, like, oh man, how did I
Yeah,
do that?
yeah, that. That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
And so tell us a little bit. I'm curious because I see you have a new publication out
Yeah.
this year, 2022. I'm curious about that. Are they encouraging you to publish, or is this a publication from your previous work that you still had lingering? Or tell us a little bit about this one.
No, this the publication we put in diagnostics is our lead assay for pancreatic cancer. So, we put a lot of work into really developing the assay, and we try to tell that story. And then we were able to test a fairly small cohort on some of the preliminary assay characteristics. We're hoping to actually build on that. Amplified in particular is really focused on getting our message out because, as a small company, we are going to get overlooked by, Pfizer, Roche, whoever is out there. So we need to, kind of prove ourselves. And, this has been peer reviewed. We're doing this work properly. You guys have a lot to, go over, and we're going to be able to do this in the long run. I mean, that being said, other companies are kind of gun shy about publishing. They don't want to get scooped. They don't want to lose their products. They'd rather patent first. It really depends on the culture of where you end up. And I'm glad that, it's not just, me and the scientist, it's our CEO who's over there like, you guys need another one. What's the next one up? What are we going to do next? It's a great culture that we're building here.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And I want people to hear that because the culture is very particular to where you are and
Yeah.
what the different company that you're at. And it goes back to that question I asked you, all these different pockets of the country that you've traveled to, but it really is about the culture, the internal culture that Amplified Sciences is making with you, with your
Yeah.
contribution, right? And so you're helping to steer that culture. Diana's helping to steer that culture. Joe's helping to steer that
Absolutely.
culture. So, it's important for people that are listening to this and are thinking about industry to also go take a look at the culture, right? And go ask questions. I mean, would you recommend people call other people in the company and be like, hey, what's the culture like? Or,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have somebody in your network who works somewhere, they will not, they're not going to lie to you. They'll tell you exactly what they're thinking about how things are going down. And, if you ever interview at a company and they put you in position to talk with somebody else who's in a similar position as what you're interviewing for, you should ask them what it's like. It's just like going to grad school. These people aren't going to lie to you more often than
yeah,
not. I
right.
mean, they want you to be happy there too. So, if they're really happy about it, they will let you know. And if they're really not, they will also let you know more often than not. But you do have to, kind of be brave and ask that kind of uncomfortable question.
Yeah, and I think you said something that is key is try to find people within your network or try to network so that you can get to those people. What are the methods that you network, Dr. Sheik?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. Like I said, I've been at Purdue several times now, so I met a lot of people along the way. And in this position in particular, it was one of my friends who recommended me to Diana to get the ball rolling. But LinkedIn is a pretty good resource. But also, when you go to conferences, take notes on people you meet, take notes on professors you see that you really like. I mean, you can reach out to them via email. They're all pretty accessible for the most part. Some of them are busier than others, but it's not a bad thing to cold call people. Or, if you have friends in the program and, my friend knows somebody who knows somebody who's in something I want, you can get connected to them, but it is uncomfortable doing that with people you don't know and trying to do that in a personable way. But don't be afraid to lean on your network.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. And how do you build the confidence? How do you build the confidence and say, okay, well, I'm going to branch out or cold call people or see if this company is doing something that we're interested in talking about or learning about?
Right. I think it's weird, but the way I get going is to psych myself up. Like, what is the worst that could happen? If I call this person and start asking them questions about their research or something, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm going to not have a job still. I mean, that's acceptable.
Right.
Trying to really balance the anxiety that you probably feel reaching out to somebody you don't know with, the benefit of they may really appreciate that you reached out to them and they may have a job that they're looking for your exact skill set. And
Yeah.
again, what's the worst that could really happen?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. They might not answer, and
Yeah.
then you'll know. But you're right. That's the worst that could really happen.
They're not, they're not going to put you in science jail and tell you you don't get to work. Like, this guy reached
right,
out to me and I wasn't feeling it. So
right. No, that's
never
right.
again.
You talk about anxieties, and we are scientists. Sometimes, not all the time, but we are sometimes not very sociable, and so it's hard to really muster up the courage and put away those feelings of anxiety, because there is no risk. There is I mean, those are fake feelings that you have to learn how to say, hey, all right, you're a scientist, but you're talking to another scientist too.
Right. And I mean, some of that comes with experience, right? A first year grad student's going to be far more nervous getting up in front of everybody than, a PI of 20 or 30 years, right? You just start to find that comfort. And, it's totally understandable and valid for people to be anxious about public speaking or reaching out. And, I think these are healthy things. But like you said, you do have to find a way. It could be psyching yourself up like I do. It could just be maybe putting it off until tomorrow. Maybe you feel a little better. Don't do that ad infinitum, but
Yes.
finding a way to overcome that is incredibly important. And scientists really get a bad rap of not being sociable or not being good communicators. And sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. But it's really up to you to kind of blaze your own trail forward. Don't let other people tell you what the stereotype of a scientist is and try to put you in there. You can be just as fun and exciting as you want to be.
I like that. I really like that. And I really like the way that you put it, not to let anybody else define you and how you should be, as long as we're respectful and we have this sense of, you know, um, I guess good communication, as you put it. But the way that you put it before, when I said, oh, Dan, I really think you're a good teacher, is because you showed that you have empathy,
Yep.
and that you can communicate well with the people that you're talking to, because you do understand that, well, maybe they might not understand it this way, then you might need to communicate it another way. But there's also this sense of respect, isn't there? Like, if
Oh,
you're
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to understand that other people have had different life experiences. Other people are living in a different body. I mean, they have different thoughts, concerns, things like that. Everybody is going to strike a different balance of what makes them happy. Some people are thrilled to work 100 hours a week and, live and breathe in the lab all their life. Some people just need to get it done and go for a walk outside, and I think all of that is perfectly reasonable. And I think there's no reason to not be respectful of these different ideologies when it comes to how you want to work or where you want to work or how you want to approach getting a job or who you want to talk to. I mean, it's okay. You
right,
go when you feel like it.
yeah, it's your journey, right?
Right, exactly. It's up to you to write that story, man.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that too. Tell me a little bit about, how do you look at when you communicate to Diana Caldwell or Dr. Davison? are there different things that you're thinking about when you're communicating to them? Because and again, I don't know the dynamics there, but I would think that sometimes the language has to switch between them and the way that you communicate with them, or that when you communicate to external partners, external companies.
Oh yeah, external companies for sure. I mean, not only do we have to be careful about what we let out, there's still things that we want to keep under wraps, but also make sure that everybody understands the story so that we can move forward amicably. But, when we have group meetings, Diana and Joe are both here, we're all presenting, and sometimes the conversation gets down in the weeds about spectroscopy and the physical chemistry of it all. And, Diana has a firm scientific background, but she's not a P chemist who's gonna understand Raman right off the bat. So, we do oftentimes, take a step and just like, wait, let's really get a level set here so that everybody's on the same page, and then we'll keep going with this. And the same thing happens sometimes when we're having, business or marketplace opportunity conversations. Diana is far more versed than any of us in that area. And sometimes we're like, wait, what do you mean? Like, this is going to be valuable, or this is going to not do this, or, how are we going to get this money that you're talking about? I don't understand. So, having the recognition that I don't know everything and I have not yet been named king of the universe, I think is incredibly important. And deferring to people who are experts and trying to get a better understanding of everything you can is important.
Again, like, I keep complimenting you because it's music to my ears when you speak and you say these things, because it's
All
really
kinds of
awesome.
wisdom.
All kinds of great wisdom. And for me, what I perceive is that everybody has a role, but you seem to be learning so much about these different areas of business, these different areas, even of science, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
so on, and commercialization and manufacturing or partnerships and all of this stuff. And it seems to me like there is a certain, as you said, if I don't know it all, I have to be cogent of that. There's a certain sense of humility that you approach the situation and that you're taking. And I mean, is there a bit of that in your success too, and allowing yourself to be humble enough to say, well, I don't know about this, but I'm open to learn about this.
Yeah, I mean, we defer to experts all the time, whether it's regulatory experts or clinicians, there are going to be people who know more about stuff than you do. And I think that was definitely instilled in me in grad school, where you're up presenting and somebody asks you a question and you can fumble your way through it and maybe get there, or you can admit, I don't know, but here is my best thought as to what's going on. And more often than not, I found, during the defense, during, the different tests they make you go through in grad school, the PI and, your other members of your committee are going to sit there and be like, all right, you don't know, but you were close. So let's just talk through this, as opposed to you, standing there and I know exactly what's going on. This is how it is. That makes them go, well, I gotta check you a little bit. And it didn't take me many times to get humbled like that before I was like, all right, maybe I don't know. And we should step back a little bit.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Because we should check ourselves and what we do know, what we don't know, but it is also an approach that you should take. Do you find that? And I just want to, again, point out that this experience that you're having is fairly unique to a startup company, because you might not necessarily know anything about the regulatory side of things. If you were in a larger company and working in a lab, they might not involve you in those conversations or those meetings, right? This only happens because you're playing so many different roles and such a critical responsibility in the company.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of startups, especially our size, would have somebody in my position who came out of, in this case, Joe's lab, who'd been working on this stuff for a while. And, I had to come in, and there's a steep learning curve to, understand some of the regulatory stuff that you mentioned, some of the quality things that we need to get through, even just general, real assay development where you have to just constantly chug through and really test, hundreds and hundreds of samples before you get it right. Um, I mean, again, it comes back to just finding something exciting. It's interesting to really learn what's behind all these assays that are for sale. You buy the kit, you run it, and you're like, yeah, that's easy. Obviously, they knew that. And I mean, to know that these guys have been filing regulatory paperwork with the FDA and building these instruments and all this kind of stuff, and how do you want to really fit in there, is very interesting. And like I said, there's never a dull moment. There's never a lack of things to do in a company like this. And it's just kind of next person up. And if
Yeah,
that's you, you just gotta grab it by the horns and make it happen.
totally. And what's your favorite thing that you do nowadays in the company? Is there anything in particular? Are you more in the lab and you like that, or are you more in the business and strategy? How are you?
When I'm in the lab, I'm always wondering what else I have to do in terms of business. And when I'm writing grants and stuff, I'm always like, man, this lab work needs to get done. So whatever I'm doing, I want to be doing the opposite usually. But I've always enjoyed the lab work. I think there's a lot of artistry and creativity that gets involved. And you really start to get a feel for, how assays are working, what chemistry is going on behind it. And you start to be able to kind of freestyle things and build these things. It's very, very interesting. Of course, when it doesn't go well, then you just kind of wasted an hour or two and you have to go back to the drawing board. But even that, just bouncing ideas off each other and trying to figure out a path forward is always interesting.
Yeah, and I will give you some guidance that I heard recently,
Sure.
which is wherever you are, be there.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're in the lab, forget about the other stuff, just focus on that stuff and be there. And whenever you're doing the business stuff, just be there. It's like, you're gonna go take some time off and you're gonna go
Oh,
on
yeah.
vacation, and that's the time you start thinking about the office. But every single time you go to the office, you're thinking about the vacation. So stop that. Just wherever you are, be there.
Yeah,
Is
it's amazing. Every time I've gone on vacation, my phone has been broken. I don't
yeah,
understand. I can't get emails or texts. It's weird.
yeah.
But I mean, no, I fully agree. You should strike a balance in between your work and your life that makes you happy. And you should set up those, guardrails so that when you're at home, you're not worried about what's going on at work. When you're at work, you're not trying to get out and run home. There's always a balance that will make you happy, that can allow for you to be successful, and that you can, you have to strike yourself.
Yeah, that's true, right? Like, you have to set it yourself. You are the one. And going back to what we were talking about before, if you don't use that hour that you had and you lost it doing something else that was frivolous, that's up to you. And you're not
Right.
going to feel good about yourself if you wasted that hour. Nobody ever, nobody ever felt bad about using 1 hour to do a little extra work.
Right.
Nobody, right?
And I mean, to what we're talking about now, it goes both ways, right? If it's, you can go out to dinner for an hour with your friends and socialize, or you can, sit at home and read papers.
Right.
Maybe it's more important to go out and socialize. Maybe the papers are more important, but that's up to you to make that decision and
Yeah.
strike whatever balance you need.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. And I think the whole issue of balance is important. There is this new generation that has felt COVID. We felt COVID. You and I are talking
Yeah.
virtually.
Yep.
There's this new sentiment about what work is, what my balance of work-life balance is. Um, it, I mean, you don't really have a choice not to be able to do science right there in the lab. Yes, you could do writing and so on at home, but definitely science is a team effort, isn't it? In terms of, we got to get together and get back into the lab.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Lab work is incredibly important, and there's no way to do that from home. But I will say, Lau always instilled in us, and I know a lot of other academics believe it too, that one day in the library is worth 1,000 days in the lab. So I think, again, with this new work from home atmosphere, there's plenty of room to play. Like if you're set on just reading papers all day long or all afternoon long, as long as you have the internet connection at home, I don't have a problem with you going home and putting in the work there if that's where you're comfortable.
Right.
But
Right.
if there's experiments to be done, obviously, you can't sit at home, and we don't have the robots yet to be able to do this from home. Someday we'll get these things going, but
Right. Another piece of great wisdom.
this is
Doc,
all from like the
Dr.
people I've
Sheik.
known.
But this is great. This is what it's all about. Because it's sometimes I have these interviews and people don't share as many of these tidbits and great, awesome pieces of wisdom. A day at the library is worth
A
how
thousand
many?
days. He
A
says a
thousand,
thousand days in the lab.
1,000 days in the lab.
I think he's exaggerating a little bit.
But I mean, I don't know about you, but I do remember, because I jumped from one PhD to another, and I do remember just spending day after day after day absorbing so much knowledge with paper after. I didn't step into the lab until I had almost read whatever had been done, and then I thought I was ready to, okay, let me try something. But there's so much wisdom in that. Is maybe we just have to keep reading, keep learning, right?
Yeah, as a chemist, you've seen one reaction on one substrate, you can do it a million times, and it doesn't always work. You spend the whole day in the lab and everything fails. And then that evening you go look up a paper and you're like, these guys did exactly what I wanted to do. Why didn't I just come here first? It's a hard
Yes.
lesson to learn over and over again. But I mean, absolutely, whenever you start a new job, whenever you start a new postdoc, whatever it is, your first couple of weeks, you should just be absorbing all the information you have, or
Yeah.
all the information you can get your hands on. It will only help you build a foundation on which you can start to succeed later on.
But these elements are also so important, as you said, to keep going and keep using. I mean, you have to keep reading, even if you're
Yeah.
in a lab in industry and you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. You should always keep improving and trying to grow intellectually if you can by reading some of these papers, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, there are books and books about regulations for getting things cleared by the FDA, and how these assays are working. You can always learn a little bit more about biochemistry. You can always learn a little bit more about what other people are trying to do in the same field. I mean, we still are coming across papers of, oh yeah, I found this other marker that nobody's heard of, but I think it's probably going to work. So then we have to dive down that rabbit hole, and where is this marker even important, and who's done what. So there's always plenty of opportunities to learn and grow, for sure.
That's awesome. And I just want to admire how you have that, you seem to have that tenacity to just like, okay, this is what we need to do. I just need to learn about the regulatory piece, and there's a lot to know about that, and I need to learn about that. And it seems that you have just the right attitude to continue to build on that. And I think maybe those have been qualities of your success as a scientist in industry and in academia. You seem to be very versatile in that way.
I like to think so. Yeah. I mean, I wish it was as easy as like, yeah, I'll just read about this. No big deal. Just go home and I'll learn everything. Not everybody's Tony Stark learning about quantum physics, but, it's kind of a situation where this is the hand you're going to be dealt, right? Somebody has to learn about regulatory. If I'm going to be the one trying to steer the ship, then I need to be the one that understands regulatory. If it's biochemistry and we run into a problem, then we need to spend time reading up and figure out where we can find solutions and how do we apply them. So
Right.
again, it comes back to there's always something to learn, and there's something exciting out there.
Yeah. And does it help you to have these ties with the university and know the people at the university too? Do you ever call somebody up and say, hey, what about this? What about that problem or this gap?
Sometimes, I mean, it's nice to keep in touch with people about what they're doing. The guys I know at Quince, I saw them grow their whole project from the ground up, essentially. So it's nice to keep tabs on them. I still go golfing with Dr. Lau on the regular. He still beats me somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Awesome.
mean, it's always fun to, keep in touch. If a situation arises and you need to lean on them a little bit, they're always open to questions and talks. I've had people send me text messages like, what do you think about this drug? Is it going to fall apart? How do you think the stability will be? How long would it take to do X, Y, or Z? I mean, don't ever, burn those bridges or abandon those things, because they can still be incredibly valuable resources later on.
Awesome. Awesome. Dr. Sheik, Dan Sheik, Director of Research and Technology at Amplified Sciences. Thank you so much for all of those pieces of wisdom. And thank you so much for talking to me, taking time to join us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was a great talk. I'm glad to have been here. I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks, Tony.
And thank you, Dan. And really,